All right. Hello, everyone. This is Ricky Stevens with Agritecture. And we have a weekend interview here with Rob Laing of Farm.One. Rob and I were catching up just by email this afternoon, and we decided to hop on a call and hit record, mainly because Farm.One is at a really interesting inflection point and tough place right now, at risk of closure. And I wanted to get Rob on here to just talk about his journey and talk about possible next steps with us. So Rob, if you wouldn't mind just giving a quick intro, and then we can get into the questions.
Yeah, thanks, Ricky. Good to talk to you today. I'm Rob. I'm the CEO and founder of Farm.One. We're a vertical farming business. We're based in New York City. We've been around for several years, but since COVID, we've been operating a weekly consumer subscription for salad greens. And really, I think, the background to this conversation is we're in a tough spot, and we're looking for new options to take the farm forward. So it's an interesting time, as Ricky said. Interesting for us.
So can you, I'm sure a lot of audience members are familiar with Farm.One, but for those that aren't, can you just start by giving us a summarized version of the Farm.One story up through when you decided to open this latest Brooklyn farm that we are seeing in your virtual background here?
Yeah, well, about 6.5 years ago, I spoke to Henry at Agritecture because I was interested in vertical farming, and I had kind of got this crazy idea in my mind. And this was sort of late 2015. Vertical farming wasn't really anything like the kind of concept that it is today. Like there were just, you could probably count on your fingers how many there were in the world. Whereas now, almost every day there's like some new thing that pops up. So Farm.One started from that very sort of idea phase back in 2015, and really around the idea of growing specialty produce for chefs. And that's what we did really successfully from 2016 up to 2020. We were serving about 40 restaurants across the city. And also on the other side, we were very open and transparent as a company about our farming. And so we would invite people in for tours and classes, and we did, these cocktail classes, and we would get people to come in and really taste a huge range of ingredients. And so we've really been known, the whole time as that kind of chef quality, super weird varieties, trying to do stuff that was much more careful and kind of, focused on quality than maybe some of the things that other people are doing. Through COVID, obviously we lost our revenue overnight. I mean, so March 2020, New York City closed down all restaurants, which was the right thing to do, but obviously, destroyed a lot of revenue for us. And the other part of our business, which was events and tours and classes, was also closed. So we did, a few months of trying to sort of figure out what to do. But we landed on this consumer subscription model, which from the gate, was just really, really readily accepted by consumers. And so within a few weeks, we had sold out the Tribeca farm space, which was, pretty small, but we had a good cohort of subscribers at that point. And so end of 2020, we were really looking for more space. And so we decided to find this space in Brooklyn. If you don't know Brooklyn well, we're in the Prospect Heights neighborhood, which is a really nice, like, family neighborhood. There's a ton of restaurants there, amazing kind of foot traffic. It's got a really good vibe. And we found this location there to build out a bigger farm on the same concept. And so we started to call it the neighborhood farm model, because we were putting a farm like right where people live. It's very open and transparent. It's designed to deliver to locals only. And it's a direct-to-consumer offering. So we're not going via a grocery store or anything like that. And that was, a whole new business for us, but we managed to kind of get that working. And so in August last year, we did our first harvest out of that location. And since then, we've really just been adding more subscribers every week, getting the facility going. And now it's like really humming. Like, it's a really beautiful farm. And we've sort of figured out how to operate it very efficiently. So yeah, everything sort of inside the business in terms of that direct to consumer is going really, really great. And to get into more detail, then we were trying to go out and raise money on that model. We didn't manage to do it, in Q3, Q4. Started to get into some acquisition discussions with some larger companies. We had two, we thought pretty close to good deals over the past few weeks, and And all of a sudden, both of them kind of disappeared. So now we're really trying to figure out, okay, what are the next steps? How do we fund this farm? And so we're doing a crowdfunding now, which we have done, successfully in the past, a few years ago. And it's something we're doing again now. So that's really just begun, and like we've been doing it for, I don't know, 72 hours or something so far. So it's early days, but we're doing that, and of course there's other approaches we're taking as well. So maybe that's like a good place to start.
Yeah, that's helpful, Rob. I want to ask maybe a couple of questions just on how the model's changed since COVID. And then we can maybe talk a little bit more about just lessons learned and fundraising challenges and things like that. But mostly curious, you grew, I think at one point you said you guys had grown 500 different varieties of herbs and edible flowers and microgreens, right?
Yeah, it's probably more than 700 now at this point, which is just, I don't like, it's such a silly number at some point. It's like, okay, whatever. But yeah, a lot. Yeah.
But that was your thing, was experimenting with these flavors that even some of these Michelin star restaurants weren't really able to source or hadn't really tried before. And you're really expanding people's minds as to the flavor potential that plants have. That was, I moved back to New York in 2016, and I found you guys, and that was like the thing that just stuck with me from coming to the farm a few times, was like, wow, I never knew that these flavors existed. And that really like inspired me on kind of my own dietary journey of like thinking a bit differently about the plant-based world. But I want to ask you, like, how have your product offerings changed between that original restaurant model to now the current direct-to-consumer model? Because I imagine that a lot of consumers aren't necessarily ready to try these flavors that are like overwhelming, or is that not the case?
No, it's a good question, and really, it's one of these things where, for chefs, we were growing a huge product range. I mean, if you counted it in terms of SKUs, you would just lose your mind, because it's like hundreds of varieties, different leaf sizes, and then there's flowers versus like versus leaves and things like that. And so, it was a complete sort of custom grow to order model, but we had automated it somehow, because we had made it so that you could take a sales invoice, which would be like, this quantity, this crop, and then we could turn it into a set of planting instructions, several weeks in advance or months in advance, that would align the farm operations to the sales piece. So there was this whole machine built around that. And then, of course, when we moved over to this model, we're delivering 3 boxes of greens to most people: microgreens, baby greens, and herbs and flowers. So completely different software and everything required, and completely different process required. But, you can take us out of the restaurant business, but you can't really take the restaurant business bit out of us, So we still grow like quite a wide range of varieties. We grow microgreens that are actually a more mature plant than you'll get in most microgreen packs. So if you buy a microgreen pack in the supermarket, you're going to have something that's pretty young, like maybe 9 days old for some folks, something like that. So we're selling something that's more like 17 days, 14 days, something like that. So you're getting like a real leaf shape. You'll go beyond the early phases of the plant. You'll get the real shape and more flavor. So this all comes out of the fact that, like, we wanted to go to chefs originally with something where they would say, oh, this really tastes of something, as opposed to, this is just a green object that, like, it looks like something. And we had such positive feedback about that the whole time. We built up this amazing reputation for quality there. And we've tried to just really infuse that in the salad mixes that we grow now. And we're obviously like evolving that the whole time, and we're learning things. And I would say, like, we're not really good yet at like growing really big leaves, and like we're not good at certain crops yet, but we're just getting better all the time. And we do this thing every week where we buy off the shelf products and we like compare what they're doing. We taste ours, and we do like taste tests and things. And we're really just trying to create something that's like a more special offering in terms of a salad than what's like normally out there. And for some customers, they write to us and say, actually, this is like too much for me, that like I want something that's plainer or whatever. And that's fine. They're pretty well served by the regular market. But the vast majority of our customers say specifically, like, I love this, this is getting us eating in different ways. I can taste the freshness. And of course, when we get to freshness, like this is another reason to do the D2C model, because we can deliver within just a few hours of harvest. So it's a very demonstrably different product to what's available through the grocery store or farmer's market, but it has like a real relation to what we were doing with the chef community a few years before.
And you seem to be doing a lot of education. I know like content has become a big part of what you guys are doing at Farm.One with this direct to consumer model that I didn't necessarily see as much with the restaurant model.
Yeah.
Is that to help those consumers? Like it's a little bit of a lower barrier to adoption with some of these plants that they've maybe never used before?
Yeah, there's all kinds of things. I mean, first of all, chefs, you can't really market to chefs. It's purely a sales business, basically. So just in case anyone's watching this, if you're trying to reach chefs, like don't bother with advertising, because chefs don't have time to go to events. They don't have time to like, see something. They need sales. Whereas, direct to consumer, of course, like it's all marketing based. And I think this is one of the things we've tried to, as a relatively small company without a ton of funding, still invest in something where we're trying to build a bigger vision than just like an individual location. And so I think spending money on, video, spending money on things where we're explaining, okay, this is how you can use this is how you can use that. That's something really important. And I think a lot of our customers are not really like super experienced chefs. They're people who want to make a salad at home and want to try something new. So I think we can take them from like here to here. We can't take them like way over here, right? And so we're trying to just do things where we introduce things one by one, and we're trying to think about how we present the product. But fundamentally, underneath that, we got this amazingly powerful thing, which is like we've got new flavors that you never had before. So like that surely is a priceless thing. And I think our consumers, like they love that as well. They'll taste like some new kind of basil, and like it's a genuinely new experience, which how often can you really have that in your day-to-day? Yeah.
Yeah. And one more question on this with the current model is, my understanding is that you're mixing in other branded products. Is that right? So you're creating a little bit more of a box, because I think that's the other knock that I've seen maybe on the direct to consumer model is, okay, maybe you can get a couple really loyal people on board with buying all of their microgreens from your farm, but ultimately you're talking about, a small fraction of their overall, weekly grocery spend. So like, what's that thing that creates a bit more scalability and more interest? Can you just tell us a little bit about how you've sort of cracked that, and what you think, what is it, a certain percentage of their grocery spend? Is it just mixing in different types of flavors? What's sort of that right mix that you found?
Well, I think there's a few things like, so, the obvious thing for us to do was to do some like value add products based on our greens. So we started with smoothies, right, which are all made with a little bit of Farm.One ingredient in there. So we've got this amazing Biscay green smoothie that has our blue spice basil in it, which has this, uniquely fragrant aroma, right? And when you open that bottle, you can just smell it. It's that unique kind of bubblegum vanilla thing. And so there's a whole like world of products there that we can explore. And I would say we've been slower than I wanted to be this year on rolling those things out. But like, it turns out opening a farm and everything is kind of hard. So we didn't quite manage to do that. But yeah, there's a whole range of products there around like a Farm.One owned brand. And then the other thing is that like, we deliver everything in reusable containers. And this is like a very important part of our subscription. We're aiming to create no plastic waste. And for a lot of consumers, that's a really compelling, unique thing that they just cannot get.
You're a farm, but you're building this kind of CSA direct to consumer brand that other companies that don't have that brand, but have a really good product and maybe share some of the values that you share, and are trying to reach similar customers, can sell through. So you really, is that the brand that you're building more so maybe even than like an urban farming brand?
I think it's it's one of these things where like, this is a bit inside baseball, but this is what this is about, right? It's like, okay, we see this huge opportunity there. I think long term that creates a really strong business for us, because the more you buy through us, the more you're locked in as a consumer. Same thing on the B2B side. The bigger the basket size, the more you can keep that customer, right? So there's that strategically. But I think there's a bigger picture, which is like, this is actually a hugely great way to get groceries, because what we can do, through a traditional grocery store model, you can't do reusable packaging. It's just impossible. If you think about the distribution chain and everything, it just doesn't work. If you rebuild it from the ground up like this, you can start small and, you can take it piece by piece, but this is how you can do it around a reusables model, a circular economy. And I think like this is where, the dilemma comes in, because we have a huge opportunity as a business, but of course we have to focus on our core product. We're trying to do things with a relatively limited budget, so these are all the things, these are all the trade-offs you make as a business. But we think we've got something really exciting there. That's the foundation is the greens, and then everything around that has the same ethos. And we know from our customers that it's amazingly compelling. Like they will take almost anything we're going to make, and that level of passion is really, I don't know, it's really exciting for a business,
Yeah, it's amazing. Well, so okay, I think we caught up now on like the new model that you're at, which is helpful to understand, because I think a lot of the audience still has sort of your old model in mind when they think of Farm.One. And by the way, I think it's pretty awesome that you've basically built two separate businesses in the matter of about 5 years, and both have had some success. So it's pretty amazing just from an entrepreneurial journey. But I want to get back to like the storyline a little bit and just talk about what's happened since. So you opened this farm in April of 2021, right?
A little bit later. The first harvest was August 2021.
August 2021. Okay. And how much runway did you sort of have at that time? And then we can get a little bit more into like the funding pursuit.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, that was August. Yeah, we had about like 4 months of runway at that point, and it definitely tighter than what we wanted. But we were out kind of fundraising in July or June. Like normally like this, every season has a supposed bad time for fundraising, but summer is not normally a good time for some fundraising. So, that was a great place to get started. But yeah, we had about 4 or 5 months of runway. We had investors who were very supportive to us, and really wanted us to do this new model. And you can imagine, you get into March 2020, right? And we had effectively $2 million in the bank at that point. We're ready to build out something, and we could have actually just closed down the business entirely and given our investors back their money. But we made a decision as a board, which is represented by our biggest investors. So the big, it was a real choice. Like, no, we want to keep this going. We want to employ people where we can, because we're employing some very vulnerable people. And we're going to try to rebuild the business. So it turned out to be something that would require, moving into a new space, making a ton of investment in equipment, all that kind of stuff. So we knew we had a relatively short time frame. I think that we went into it, though, very confident that this is a good business. I think that I said it at the time, and I say it now, like we went into COVID as a good business. We've emerged like as a better business. We've got something that's more scalable, more opportunity. Like, it's a very exciting thing.
I think one thing that I see sometimes a lack of understanding in is like, there's obviously a ton of venture capital that's flooding into the ag tech and specifically the vertical farming space. And so
certainly has, yeah.
People will kind of extrapolate that and say, okay, so any vertical farm can just raise venture capital money because venture capitalists want to invest into vertical farms. But you're doing things really differently with this model. And I'm just curious, like, do you think that, and venture capitalists actually, like, it's really about, even though they're taking on a lot of risk, they don't want to see things that stray too far from a kind of a conventional route. Like they maybe want to see one step that's different, one kind of major disruption, but you're sort of like coming in and seemingly like disrupting a lot of different things. Is that part of the challenge? Is it's just it's too different, right? Like you're you're going kind of like this distributed farming route rather than like where the industry seems to be headed of like these mega indoor farms. You're selling direct to consumer, whereas all these farms that maybe even start selling to some of the smaller guys, they end up just entering into these partnerships with huge retailers. Even just the moving away from plastics and going into reusables, like that's different enough. So is that part of what the challenge was? Is just like Rob, this is too much for us. Like this is too different. Yeah,
It's
tell me a little bit about that.
I think that if a company is seen to be, trying to do too much, it's unattractive. That's not the feedback that we generally got during the process about what we're doing. I think because everything we're doing is sort of, it is different, but it's like a sort of different stack. Like the moment you do direct to consumer, okay, then you do local delivery, okay, then you can do this. Like it makes some logical sense. I think that the thing that there was a couple of dynamics that I think were kind of playing out over the past year. I think one of them is that most of the large venture capital firms or ones around them like have already made a pretty big bet in a vertical farm, whether it be Bowery Plenty, Aero Farms, 80 acres, like folks like that. Like so a lot of bets have already been made. A lot of people are not willing to have two vertical farming companies in the portfolio. This probably makes sense. I don't really disagree with that, So then you're left with, okay, someone who hasn't made a bet in vertical farming, which means, okay, I mean, it's kind of a certain sort of thing where they probably didn't want to make a bet anyway, or they were waiting for the right thing. Okay. And then you go, if they're waiting for the right thing, well, what is that thing? Is it something like a Farm.One? Is it more of a technology play? Is it, something to do with software? Is it, so you can see how, like, yeah, it may not have been the perfect time for us. It, may not have been the perfect sort of scenario. I think that the other thing about it is that, yeah, like given that we do have a few things put together, like we've got vertical farm plus consumer, it can sort of, to your point, come a little bit across like Peloton probably came across a little bit like this in the beginning. It was like, oh, you've got this really sexy bike and you want to do like digital content. Oh, okay, like this is some new beast, I think there's still folks out there who either will invest in us or like, etc. I think there are folks out there who can support something like this, but it takes someone who has a pretty good like consumer awareness, I think, and an awareness of ag tech and stuff like that. And there's just not that many people out there in the world. I mean, it's a small cohort.
And I'm just curious if you have any lessons or any other realizations. I mean, you mentioned that you've had, crowdfunding has been successful for you guys before, and I think specifically equity crowdfunding, right? Is that a route that you'd recommend for other entrepreneurs that are at that early stage, or are there other types of financing that you've come across that you think are a better fit for that non-billion-dollar growth plan vertical farm?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a bunch of ways of going about this. I think that like the tricky thing fundamentally is that building these kinds of farms is pretty expensive, and you only really are going to get a real return on that investment over multiple years. And that's if you do it right. If you're like really good, you're on top of your shit, then you can make a little bit of money over multiple years. And if you add that up, doing what we did, doing what some folks are doing, doing friends and family rounds, doing a little bit of crowdfunding or something, like it's possible to make that work, I think. But if you bring in some, act of God kind of thing like COVID, or you bring in something like, you didn't hire the right grower or something like that, like those little things can kill that business because you're just running on such a tight little margin, So I think these two paths of like try to raise as much money as you can under the sun, or like try to make it work, they're both actually still really risky, and like they both got their downfalls because, a lot of these guys have raised a ton of money. They're still almost as at risk as some of the small guys. I think that when it comes to crowdfunding and stuff like that, I would say as a team at Farm.One, we're kind of marketing experts. And so like, not to sound too big headed or whatever, it's just like, you got to be shit hot at that kind of thing to have any chance of like really raising money through crowdfunding. It's got to be in your bread and butter, or you've got to just have this amazing story that like people can't put down. And I think a lot of farms are just not going to have that, right? So finding other ways for financing, whether it's like having a really rock solid model that's actually tested over multiple years, or having something else, I think is an option. But yeah, building these businesses is like super hard.
Why why should people believe that Farm.One can scale this direct to consumer model, right? I'm just thinking about people that aren't in Brooklyn and they're just thinking, is this a Brooklyn hipster thing of spending, 3 times what they'd spend at a typical grocery store on these microgreens? Like, is this really going to scale to other cities? And can it even scale beyond maybe one little farm in those cities? So
Yeah.
tell us about like any evidence that you have for that.
Yeah, I think, there's a few ways to look at this. One of them is like Blue Bottle coffee. I think it's a reasonable analogy. Before Blue Bottle came along, everyone was pretty happy with the Starbucks, right? And then as soon as you get the Blue Bottle, oh, okay, I'll spend like actually 30%, 40%, 50% more on something that's actually just a different experience at that point. And I think that's one of the things we're approaching with the farm. It's that, the basic is available, but getting something that's actually way fresher is compelling for a lot of people for whom, frankly, just a few dollars difference on a salad just isn't going to make any difference to their lifestyle or their day. And there's, if you look at household income across the US, there's 50 plus cities who could easily support multiple Farm.Ones based on household income. Like this farm behind me, when it's done, it'll serve about 2,500 people, with salad greens, additional things like that. It can serve as a place for people to come, they can hang out, they can experience things. It's a whole hub for neighborhood food. And I think that, on the sort of ideological side, right, if you want to support local food, like this is exactly the way to do it. Like, you have something that can run profitably, but it's like a positive benefit to the neighborhood. And then in terms of those unit economics, like, we haven't been doing this for years and years and years, but, we've been doing this for 6 months at this point. We're very confident in our yield numbers, we're very confident in our customer retention, which is great year on year. It's like 60% plus on a weekly subscription that most people through all various bits are paying $25 a week for. Like that's a great number. We're running at about 48% gross margin, which includes labor. And so, like we're able to actually run one of these farms and make it work. And the reason that, we've got such good margins is we're going direct to consumer. So we're not giving away 50% to the grocery store. We do have to, do things like delivery. We have our own like e-commerce system. There's like tons of stuff there, but all that infrastructure serves to make the next farm easier. And building these farms, this farm will cost about 2.5 million in total to build out. If you compare that to the cost of building a huge vertical farm, I mean, it's a fractional cost, right? And this thing can get up and running within a matter of months, instead of like a couple of years. And so it's a much sort of leaner kind of great way to enter a city, get something going. And yeah, it may be something that, eventually we have a slightly different model for financing, potentially like franchise or something in the future. But, what we've got to do right now is really, get this New York one up to full capacity. And that can also act as a customer acquisition vehicle for the next one. And we can do the next one in New York. And definitely we're going to start in these sort of major cities like New York, Chicago, we've always talked about as a company. But this is something that is viable in like a Columbus, Ohio, in Nashville, or whatever. The delivery method obviously has to change. No one's going to be biking around Dallas, like mostly. So, but like those are manageable things. And I think that, from a consumer perspective, we've demonstrated that through a bunch of different audiences, not just the people who live in Tribeca, the wealthiest zip code in the country, like not just them. There's people who live in our neighborhood in Brooklyn who, see this thing as a huge source of value, and they're not millionaires, they're regular people. So yeah, these things can work. It takes a lot of effort to make them work because, of course, every other brand, every other habit they have is around supermarket, grocery, all that kind of stuff. But there's so many people out there who want to have a different approach to food, that this kind of concept is viable in lots and lots of places.
All right. So end of the road with my questions. This is awesome. I think, just really transparent. I appreciate your honesty and willingness to just get on here and talk about where you're at. But I want to just leave the floor open to you now to tell people that are interested in helping Farm.One take that next step. What's in it for them, and where can they go?
Yeah, sure. So we have a WeFunder. WeFunder is a crowdfunding platform for equity crowdfunding. So if you invest in us, you're getting a piece of our company. Everything is on that website. There's a whole legal disclosure thing I would have to read if I told you the terms or anything like that. So just go to that website. And I think that, what you got to think about if you're thinking about like investing in something like Farm.One is, there's the immediate picture, which I think that we've really done a pretty damn good job at getting the unit economics to a profitable point and getting this point to it's like a realistic business that can grow. And then I think there's the idealistic piece. It's like, okay, well, what are you trying to support out there? What if you're putting your money behind something? Is it like a gadget, which is cool, everyone loves that? Or is it something that's like, a business that is genuinely trying to improve the local food system? And I think that, as Ricky, and like the number of people who've kind of come through Farm.One, either as interns or they've worked there and they've gone on to things like, I think, what we've been able to foster here is like this amazing creative environment where our team has just made it really accepting for people to come in, given people a ton of knowledge, and then people go off into the industry as well. So I think by supporting Farm.One, you're supporting a creative and innovative kind of side to the ag tech world, which we need. I love this space a lot. It's exciting. I got into it partly because of that tech excitement, etc. But I think we can do great community things as well. think we can do really positive things around food that are beyond just scaling up like a technology. And so that's what Farm.One's really about. So yeah, check it out. I'm also, one of the good things about running a crowdfunding is, you can raise some money, and like we've already raised like $75,000 in like 72 hours or something, which is pretty good, I think, for that kind of start. But like what you get from is not just raising money, you get to meet people actually who say, oh, okay, well, I'll do the crowdfunding, but also like, let's talk about this, let's talk about that. And I think Farm.One's at a pretty tough point right now. We're not dead, but we're slightly injured right now. We need the money to get to the next stage. But the next stage for us is really exciting. Building out this neighborhood farm vision is a really, really great kind of next step for us that proves that whole model. But we're interested in doing that with different types of folks. So it could be someone who wants to acquire the company, but it could be someone who just wants to invest and has maybe a bigger ticket size and they don't want to do it through the crowdfunding. So I would say get in touch, and share this. If you invest, please share it as well. It's very useful for us. And yeah, we're going to figure it out. Let's see what happens.
Can you remind everyone how much in total you're trying to raise? And
yeah,
if anybody is maybe interested at above a certain check size, what that check size would be to just reach out directly to you rather than to go through the crowdfunding?
Yeah, so totally. So we're raising up to $5 million. The target is really $3 million. That's a really good amount. And so, that's what we're targeting. I would say if you've got a check size like over 50K, like definitely reach out, and like there may be something, that we want to talk about in addition to that. But yeah, like it's out there, and it's running now. So that's the next thing you should do the moment you stop watching this video.
Well, thanks again, Rob. Really appreciate you coming on here, and best of luck with this fundraise.
Thanks, Ricky. As always, you're doing great stuff.